Hi everyone, welcome back to Virtually 2023, Numensa's free virtual web accessibility and digital inclusion conference. Firstly, a big thanks to Alistair Campbell and Bianca Prins for their excellent talks earlier. We are going to have the recordings of those talks and all the other talks this week available right after the conference ends on Thursday. We're joined this week by MyClearText, who are providing live captions. You can access these by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom of Zoom, or alternatively, we have provided a stream text link in the chat for a fully adjustable page of captions. For our final talk of day one, we have Clint Dann, staff content designer at Coursera, with his talk, Accessible Experiences Through Structured Content. Please do get involved in the discussion and say hello in the chat. We'd love to know where in the world you're tuned in from. Make sure your chat settings are switched to everyone and not just hosts and panelists. And that way, everyone will be able to see your messages. And if you've got any questions for Clint, submit them using the Q&A box. I'll try and get through as many as I can at the end. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Clint, to kick things off.
Well, thanks very much. And hello, everybody. And welcome to my talk on accessible experiences through structured content. So over the next few minutes or so, I'll walk through a definition of structured content, a crash course in how to use structured content, and how it can be applied to accessible digital design. A little bit about me. I'm Clint Tam. I'm currently staff content designer at Coursera. And in my past life, I've had other titles such as information architect and content strategist, but essentially I'm the structured content guy. So what is structured content? It's 2023, so I asked this question to an AI bot, and it came up with this. Structured content is a method of organizing information in a way that makes it easy to find, understand, and use. It involves breaking down content into smaller, reusable pieces that can be combined in various ways to create different outputs. And that's spot on. The robots are going to take all of our jobs. Now, structured content has two key components: information architecture and human-centered design. Take that, robots. So let's start with a general definition of information architecture. Information architecture focuses on organizing, structuring, and labeling content in an effective and sustainable way. And this is a definition that you've probably come across, and it's accurate, if not a little bit thin. I much prefer Dan Klein's definition, and he defines information architecture as the interplay of meaning, arrangement, and rules for interaction, as ontology, taxonomy, and choreography. And information architecture is a foundational piece of structured content. So let's dive into this definition a little further. So the first part of IA is ontology, the meaning of a thing, quite literally what it is. Second, taxonomy, defined by Dan Klein as arrangement. It's groupings and categorizations of things. And finally, choreography, rules for interaction. It's how things work together. So by defining these things, that's information architecture: ontology, taxonomy, and choreography. The next foundation of structured content is human-centered design. And popularized by the folks at IDEO, human-centered design is a problem-solving technique that puts people at the center of the development process to create new solutions that are purpose-built for their needs. So why is this fundamentally important? The Dewey Decimal System is a form of information architecture that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And the Dewey Decimal System is an architecture that supports a cataloging need, a data need, a means to provide standardization of the sorting, cataloging, and storage of books. And it works really well at this. It's a great system to keep books organized. But the human need is the retrieval of information. And while a well-organized catalog of books is a helpful tool towards meeting that human need, it's only a part of what is required. So how do you do it? The Dewey Decimal System has been around for something like 200 years, and here I am telling you that it's incomplete. To begin with, we have to start with information architecture. These things need to be in place, but designed with a human-centered lens. And this can be applied with a series of pretty simple questions. Ontology. What is it? There's a saying called the bread, bread. It is what it is. So in choosing your labels for things, keep it direct and to the point. Taxonomy. What makes it what it is? What other things are like this thing? How are they alike? Define the component parts of your thing. Where things are alike, ensure they share a common label. The nuance which makes things unique can be found with what is assigned to each label. Choreography. What makes it useful? How is it used? And with what can it be used with? All of your things and their component parts can work together like cogs in a machine. Now, it may seem kind of confusing, but in practice, it's really quite simple. In fact, it's Sesame Street simple. So this is a video from a classic Sesame Street episode demonstrating the creation of an information architecture.
Hey,
Yes.
hey, what are you,
There we go, far out, okay,
what are you guys doing? Rush.
okay, what do we need?
I need your book.
Book,
Book.
What are you doing? What are you,
Never, shh, just come over. Okay.
well, yeah, right there, that's okay.
what are you guys doing? Shh.
Watch, right there.
Yeah, well, what is that for? What are you, shh,
What is it?
come on, fellas, tell me what you're doing.
We need one more thing, one more thing.
Glove, you got a glove?
Yeah. What are you doing, guys?
Never mind.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Three of these things belong together. Three of these things are kind of the same. One of these things just doesn't belong here. Now it's time to play our game. It's time to play our game.
All right, now you figured it out now?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
which is the right answer?
The book does not belong.
You're sure about that?
Positive,
You're absolutely sure?
absolute. Why?
Why?
Because
Mhm.
now the hat, the glove, and the scarf are all the things that you wear to keep out the cold.
Wow.
during winter time.
But,
Smart.
And this is just a book.
well,
That
there's
you read.
nothing wrong with a book.
Well, I mean, it's a book that you read. It doesn't
Right.
keep out the
It
cold.
doesn't keep up.
That was nice.
Good. Nice job.
Rim.
So in the video, the hat, scarf, and glove are defined by their useful component structures. They are things that you wear to keep out the cold. The book is also defined by its useful component structures, which does not keep out the cold. It is something that you read. The components themselves define what the object is. Furthermore, the semantics of what goes into each component defines how each thing is unique from other similar things. So we could extend this exercise and find that gloves keep your hands warm, a scarf keeps your neck warm, and a hat keeps your head warm. They're all things that you wear to keep out the cold, but they all do it a little bit differently. Defining content structures allows you to group fruits from vegetables, and further details allow you to distinguish apples from oranges. They're both things, they're both fruit, but they're different kinds of fruit with different properties. Now, for most, this is pretty obvious. But when it comes to apples, even apples are not always the right kind of apples. And this image displays a chart of different varietals of apples in 3 columns labeled sweet to eat, classic flavor, and uniquely flavored. It shows an image of the apple, and beside the image, it displays the name of the varietal, a color-coded dot corresponding to an appropriate use, eating, cooking, baking, or salads, and a description of its flavor and texture. These varietals of apples have been further defined by their unique name, their image showing shape and color, use case, taste, and texture. They are defined by their content structures. So where does this impact accessible design? When we design and create digital experiences, we are communicating a series of connected digital things. When we talk about digital design, we usually refer to websites made up of web pages. A web page? The entire concept is a skeuomorphism of a printed page. And along with that page comes all of its shortcomings. There's a famous painting by René Magritte called The Treachery of Images. And the painting shows an image of a pipe. And below it, Magritte painted, Ceci n'est pas une pipe, French for, this is not a pipe. And of that, Magritte said, the famous pipe, how people reproached me for it. And yet, could you stuff my pipe? No, it's just a representation, is it not? So if I had written on my picture, this is a pipe, I'd have been lying. Which leads us to the treachery of web pages. A digital representation of a predefined analog object, in this case a page, is not a digital experience, any more than Magritte's pipe was actually a pipe. So how did we get here? Gutenberg invented the printing press in the 1400s. The rotary press was invented in the 1800s, and it's still used today, using technology such as computer to plate. It's pretty much the same principle as good old Gutenberg. And computer to plate is made possible by desktop publishing software. Laser and inkjet printers and dot matrix printers, if anybody remembers them, Gen Xers, hands up, allow for small volume printing. And then the internet. The internet was invented in 1966, but the World Wide Web in 1989, the graphical web in 1993, which finally gets us to the web page. A digital representation of a predefined analog object inherits all of its shortcomings. Unclear semantics, linear information flow, self-referential, not independently understandable. These are challenges with pages and collections of pages. We usually call these things books. And oh yeah, they're first and foremost a visual medium. So what now? Karen McGrane wrote a book which was published in 2012, and that's like a million years in tech terms. It's called Content Strategy for Mobile. And in her book, she references blobs versus chunks. Blobs are old style pages, or worse, tomes of text, with no digital representation of semantic or meaningful structures. Chunks, on the other hand, are structured content. By organizing content into meaningful chunks, you allow for adaptive content design. And that means that your content can adapt and is ready to be delivered as is to any different medium. And well, what is a medium? A medium is any means of mass communication. It includes print-based page things, but it's not limited to that. In 2023, the definition of what a communications medium is should be changing. We aren't actually tethered to things that can be made with a printing press. It's not the 15th century anymore. So this is an old image that that was from a Karen McGrane presentation back in 2012, but it still works today. So we have print as a medium in the top left. And yes, it's still viable and effective as a medium. But we also have web, mobile, tablets, smart TVs, digital signage, voice assistants, watches, and toast. It's 2023. We need to get away from the web page. So toast. Well, this image shows digital content burned onto pieces of toast. And someone rigged up a toaster to be able to toast pixels into bread. So if you could get a Wi-Fi signal to your toaster, your breakfast could be a medium. That might not be the best way to communicate a message, but the point is that structured content objects can be delivered in any way. And this includes zero display mediums. The image here shows a Google Home voice assistant. Adaptive ready structured content objects can be easily delivered to devices like voice assistants. And this is not to mention that structured content objects can very easily define semantic web experiences to allow for optimal delivery by a screen reader. In tactile experiences, why not? This image shows a 3D model of a minion from the Despicable Me movies. Things with the metadata for the geometry, material, relative weight can be stored as a content structure and conveyed almost as simply as words nowadays. Virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D printing, advances in these technologies have put people in a position to truly redefine how we can deliver digital experiences. When properties are defined, structured, and labeled, they become inherently useful and universally communicable. Structured content-powered digital experiences do not need to be translations of a digital representation of a printed page. Structured content can power universally accessible, adaptable digital experiences. So where does this impact accessible design? I want to touch on WCAG and how we can define semantic web experiences to allow for optimal delivery via screen reader. And WCAG explains how to make web content more accessible to people with disabilities. The WCAG guidelines and success criteria are broken down into semantic components, ensure alternative methods are available for use. So I'll try to illustrate this using a familiar structure. Essays are composed with semantic structures: intro, body, and conclusion. The intro is made up of a lead and thesis. The body is made up of ideas tied to the thesis with a topic sentence and are arranged in a logical order. And the conclusion wraps the arguments and restates the main arguments in a simplified manner. If we apply this structure, we can see here that the structure of each component can be easily mapped to semantic markup in a way that follows WCAG standards to convey the information to people of all abilities and to any medium. Each component has a name and a purpose, ontology, a group to which it belongs to, taxonomy, and a sequence in which it all works together, choreography. And structured content can allow you to make the most of your content through adaptive design, but that adaptive design requires adaptive delivery. And that's where headless CMSs come in. Create once, publish everywhere was a model coined by NPR back in 2007. It represents the delivery of structured content objects to various different presentation layers or mediums. A headless CMS is designed to support this kind of delivery, which is enabled by taking a structured content approach to your objects. So one example of a headless CMS is Contentful. That's the one I'm most familiar with, so it gets their logo up here. Now, well-structured content in a headless CMS can support the delivery of adaptive content to any medium. And we can take a look at our essay structure that we had up as an example. And our example essay structure could look like this in a headless CMS. And illustrated here is a content model that supports all of the components that we identified in our structure. Titles, subheadings, thesis statements, and topic sentences are all clearly identified and are made known to allow for mapping within the specified context. All of this stuff is labeled and ready to be delivered to any device. So in conclusion, the structured content objects are defined by what they are, not how they are delivered. The definition of structured content objects is quite literally a Sesame Street exercise. Accessible experience need not be a translation of digital representation of a printed page. Starting with the concept of the web page, as we've already discussed, but applying rules to allow for the translation of a visual experience to other ways of delivery seems like the literal bare minimum and allows for the proliferation of poor digital design. Instead, structured content objects allow for adaptive content designs, which can better serve varying human needs. And any content that is well structured is ready for delivery to anyone and everyone, regardless of what medium they choose to use. So that's the end of my talk. I would like to just say some thank yous. So Dan Klein, who has that great definition of information architecture, Karen McGrain, who's referenced a lot through this talk, the folks at Nomensa for inviting me, and most especially of all, you for coming to my talk. Thank you very much. Yeah, do we have any questions?
Awesome. Thanks, Clint. No, it was an awesome talk. I would absolutely love for Toast to become normalized as a medium for information. I would also love the Dan Klein references. He's spoken at many of our conferences, and we are big fans of him here. So yeah, if anyone has any questions for Clint, please do submit them using the Q&A function or the chat. I will keep an eye on both. Clint, it's great to get a kind of information architect's perspective kind of on accessibility. Do you think kind of in that space there's enough training in accessibility for IAs?
But it's a little bit tricky, I think, and I think one of the challenges with just information architecture in general, at the start of my talk, like this, the concept of having two definitions, right? And I think one of the things oftentimes with information architecture is it usually takes a data need as its priority. So what you end up doing is, you can create, all these schemas for, database and spreadsheet tables, and all that stuff gets in there, and you have all of your information, but it's generally not designed in a way for actual delivery. It's there for kind of like the Dewey Decimal System, where we're missing those components that allow you to sort of take that architecture and then translate it into a human need. And I think because of it's really similar and really close, but it's not quite there yet. And then when it comes to sort of the creation of these experiences, because of the slightly different approach, you end up having to kind of still jump through hoops to be able to assemble this into an experience that then becomes accessible. But by just sort of applying that human-centered lens to it, to how you're actually organizing and structuring your data, you can still do that, accomplish having that sort of data need of just sort of findability. You can still manage that, but you can manage to do so in a way that supports adaptive delivery and by using meaningful structures, going back, Dan Klein's concepts of ontology and taxonomy, and making sure that that's centered in, calling the bread, like real language. And then that can help really define your accessible experience. If you have all of your stuff labeled semantically already in the way that it's stored, it can automatically be semantically delivered to any medium that you need it to.
Awesome, thank you. So we got a question here from Jada, who asks, hi Clint, it would be great to hear what your views are when it comes to PDFs for online consumption and document accessibility in general.
Oh no. The past life, we actually were running PDF generation from our headless CMS and our content structures. There is PDF UA is the accessibility standard for PDFs. It's really similar to WCAG. So essentially what we were doing, like we had our web-based and our web-based experiences. We had all of our semantic markup and our semantic structures mapped out to essentially WCAG compliant HTML and CSS structures. So it wasn't too much of a stretch then to have those mapped out to PDF UA structures as well. The automation of that, I mean, this was a while ago, like 12, 15 years ago, but at the time, sort of the API-based structures that we were using to be able to render PDFs weren't well set up for PDF UA. So we kind of had to do some work to some additional work. So we would spit out this PDF that the system wanted to strip out a lot of our semantics. So then we had to kind of reapply the semantics again. So we had a great dev house based in London, Ontario, Canada, called Digital Echidna. They did a great deal of work in rigging it up so that we could deliver accessible PDFs using our structured content and the semantics that were baked into that.
Brilliant, thank you. So we have another question here that's been submitted anonymously. As they ask, as someone who works within the education sector, what do you think is the biggest accessibility challenge compared to other sectors? Are there any unique issues or frustrations, do you think?
It is super challenging. So prior to my time at Coursera, I worked for OPHEA, the Ontario Physical Health Education Association. And one of the big challenges, so when you're setting up and building out content structures, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create some consistency. Take a look at our essay example. Like every essay needs these parts, every essay should have these parts. Likely every essay will have those parts. But when it comes to education, different approaches to pedagogy, different ways and different means to assemble, deliver learning materials and learning programs. There's so much variation. There's an art to it. So that becomes really challenging in trying to find a way to create standardization that allows you to essentially have a pattern to deliver these semantics in. And the more variation you have, right, the harder it is for all of your patterns to fit. But then the more general you allow it to be, the harder it is to predefine semantic structures. So that's sort of the $1 million question is, how can we sort of find that middle ground? We're always kind of struggling with that in the education space is, how do we allow for creativity through pedagogy and be open to different pedagogical structures, but at the same time, how do we establish a pattern that can allow us to have known objects to be able to deliver semantically and adapt to any delivery medium?
Brilliant, thank you. So our next question is also on semantics. So in the UK, this is from Poppy, in the UK, different parts of the country have different words for a bread roll, including butty and cob. Many wars have been fought over it, and it's something that pops up on social media on a weekly basis. So what do you for your organization do to ensure that the word you're using, i.e. for bread, is the same as the that everyone else is using?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Tons of regional differences, especially when it comes to, ontology and taxonomy. There's a card sort is a great tool to use to see where people categorize and identify certain things in certain terms. A little exercise that we like to do is it's the hot dog challenge. And the question is a hot dog a sandwich? Yes, no, and why? There's never consensus. So that there's something to be said about ensuring that the language that you use, that your ontology and your taxonomy is validated by your user base. And that can vary depending on where your user base is from. Over here in Canada, there's, I think pretty much universally in Canada, we all call like a bubbly soft drink, a carbonated soft drink, we would call it pop. But then if you go south of the border, depending on what state you're in, some people call it pop, some people call it soda. I think in Georgia, in the state of Georgia in the United States, they just call it Coke, just universally. So there's making sure that you're using the right language for the audience that you have, and to user validate that by way of things like card sorts is it's fundamentally important, because you need to make sure that the terms that you use are meaningful and they have the right meaning.
Brilliant, thank you, Clint. I think we need a nationwide card sort exercise for on the bread roll issue. Awesome. That is. Oh, we've got one more question actually from Tanika, who asks, "What are some recommended websites, books, or other resources that you'd recommend to strengthen information architecture skills?"
So the aforementioned Karen McGrain, I think she's written 2 books. They are still super relevant and just she's just brilliant. Anything from Dan Klein, I believe his organization is called the Understanding Group, TUG. I think, don't know if it's .org, .net, .com. The Understanding Group, though, would be what you put in Google, or Dan Klein. There's an individual based in the United States. Her name's Sophia Prater, and she has a great approach to sort of structuring content called object-oriented UX. And she is also fantastic. Those would be sort of, I think you can get everything that you would ever need to know essentially from those three people.
Awesome. Thanks, Clint. Brilliant. Well, actually, we've got one more question. I keep wrapping up, then another question pops in. So we've got the last question here. What are the existing challenges in current web information architecture? How do you see artificial intelligence being used in the coming years for making various media more intelligent, more accessible? Sorry.
That's a great question. So I think one of the challenges, I think far too many digital experiences are still kind of stuck in the page-based concept, and that's really been a hard barrier to sort of break through. So what we end up with is the only meta structures that exist in a lot of websites are just stuff that exists to make your stuff Google friendly, right? It's just SEO meta, which is kind of like the Dewey Decimal System, right? It's not really designed for human consumption. It's designed to get your stuff to rank higher. And then once you get out of that, then you just get a blob of text, or, various blobs of text. And, oftentimes, maybe they hopefully they did so in a way that is, WCAG compliant and accessible, but that's not always the case. And when you're faced with that type of situation, it actually becomes really hard work to get your stuff to WCAG compliancy. You just got this, massive blob of text that you need to go in and apply a bunch of stuff after the fact, manually and really tediously, one component at a time, because there's no structures, there's no components. So I think that's sort of one of the biggest challenges. But further, like to take it to the sort of the AI aspect of that as well. One of the things about creating accessible experiences, when you're really clear about the semantics of what your stuff is, what it is, why it's there, all of its different component parts, how is it useful in conjunction with other things? When you define that through your semantics, that becomes more abundantly clear as to the purpose and the context of what that thing is, and why it exists and what purpose it serves. And that context, if it exists, it's not only communicable to humans, it's also communicable to anything that has some semblance of intelligence. And AI is a part of that. So if you are trying to extract information, if a machine is trying to extract information, it's still looking for essentially your natural language cues. It's looking for that type of information of context and taxonomy and ontology and choreography. So it can better understand why you're saying the things that you're saying. It can better understand how is this useful, and to what human need does this serve. And by applying those levels of semantics in your content structures allows for greater understandability for artificial intelligence, which allows for your artificial intelligence to create better results and generate a greater understanding of what it's looking at and how it can then, better define an answer for you. So structured content isn't just the thing that can make for easier, more accessible human experiences. It can also effectively turbocharge AI structures and AI components.
Awesome. Thanks, Clint. We are getting a few people asking about the recording that will be available on Thursday, straight after the conference ends. And yeah, that will be emailed out to you Thursday afternoon, UK time. So yeah, that is just about all we have time for. Thank you, Clint. That was amazing. Awesome presentation and awesome Q&A. We're going to be back tomorrow for another 3 sessions from Amani Ali, accessibility consultant here at Nomensa, Heather Hepburn, accessibility lead at Skyscanner, and Richard Morton, who is head of accessibility at the Central Digital and Data Office for the UK government. Clint, again, thank you. And thank you to everyone that tuned in too. And hopefully we will see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks, everybody.